Shalom Israel, and welcome to another edition of Yasharalah's 20-minute breakdown, where I'll attempt to break down the scriptures within 20 minutes. But you know how we do by now. First and foremost, we must all give all praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Waha, Rakah, Kodash, and the Akims and the elders in the highways and byways pushing this word in truth and sincerity. All praises. And the elder women teaching the younger women. All praises to you too. And the camps and the solo brothers going out there making videos, edifying the body, pushing the truth according to scriptures. All praises. Now, what I'm going to touch on today is the Negro slave Bible. This Bible is what we would have been taught out of from slavery, even up to today. This is where the understanding of Christianity that all our people, even up to today, will have in their minds. And even though today you may have the complete Bible, well, when I say complete, you may have 66 books because the church don't use the Apocrypha, which Apocrypha in Hebrew just means hidden books, which is about 14 other books that was removed in the 18th century by the Protestants under the Roman Catholic Church. And this is why the fact that even though you may have them 66 books, Christians and even the pastors don't know the Bible, because this is the Bible that you would have been taught out of. It's very selective. And the whole point of Christianity and using this Bible that you can see on display was to make sure the slaves stay pacified. So there's no fighting them, there's no hope, and all they do is accept their fate as being slaves, and they never rise up against their slave master. I mean, when you look at Christianity, what does it teach? All it teaches is you got to live by faith. You don't have to do anything. And it makes sure it pushes the fact that God is love. You got to love everybody. Everybody is your brother. It pushes this all-inclusive, even though those Caucasians who's pushed this doctrine don't include you. But yet you had to love everybody. So they taught you to love everybody, no matter what they look like, whether they were doing anything to you or not, because that's why they say turn the other cheek, or and things like this. This is why they push this kind of doctrine. It's because the slave had to be taught to love his master regardless. And one of the main things is that a slave could not read English. So he had to be taught, not only he had to be taught English, but then he had to be taught what he read out of this Bible, what it meant. So a slave master could have a slave read something the way he wants it read and teach him what that meant. And this slave now had to teach other slaves. This slave would have been put in charge of other slaves. So now this slave, who the slave master is teaching out of the slave Bible certain verses and what they meant, he had to now go and teach the other slaves, which was allowed to congregate on Sunday, because that was the day of worship that they allowed the slaves to go and worship. So he had to teach them what these words meant and what these verses meant. But remember, he's not going to be taught the truth of the Bible. He's going to be taught the way the slave master wants him to know the Bible, to keep him in subjection, loving the slave master and never rising up against the slave master. Because why? They also gave us the so-called white Jesus. So when we look at the Caucasians, we look at them as Christ or as God. So we don't want to go against God. So what we don't do is go against them. It was all brainwashing, and it worked to a T. Even up to today, it's still working. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go into a few scriptures, but mostly I'm going to read you some things out of this slave Bible. But first I'm going to open this lesson with Judith chapter 5 and verse 20. This is in the Apocrypha, Judith, because this was definitely removed out of the Bible for a specific reason. And when I start reading it and explain, you'll see why. But I'm going to open this lesson with the book of Judith, chapter 5 and verse 20. But first and foremost, I have my timer, and I'm about to start in 3, 2, 1. Boom, we're away. Let's go straight there. The book of Judith, chapter 5 and verse 20, and it reads, "Now, therefore, my Lord and Governor, if there be any error against this people, and they sin against their God, let us consider that this shall be their ruin, and let us go up, and we shall overcome them." Now, this is when Asa was speaking to Holofernes. This is when they were encamped against Israel and they were going to attack Israel. So Asa was warning the captain of the host, Holofernes, and his chief men, that if the Israelites, if they've sinned against their Most High, against their God, meaning if they've broken the commandments, then he said, if they've sinned against their God, let us consider that it will be their ruin. So they knew that if we were in sin, the Israelites were in sin and was breaking God's commandments, the Most High God would not fight for Israel, the children of Israel. So then they know they can go up and they can fight against Israel, and they will win, and they will subdue Israel, and they would have the children of Israel in subjection, i.e. as slaves. But watch verse 21. Watch this. Judith chapter 5 and verse 21, and it reads, "But if there be no iniquity in their nation," say that, the nation, "let my Lord now pass by, lest their Lord defend them, and their God be for them, and we become a reproach before all the world." Now, when you fast forward now, the Romans come into power. And if you go to the book of Luke, chapter 21, verses 20 to 24, now it will show you where the Mashiach Yahushua, the one you call Christ, had warned that when you see Jerusalem compassed by armies, knowing that the desolation thereof is nigh. So, warning us that the Romans were coming trampling down Jerusalem. Now, I don't want to go into that verse. You can read that yourself. But when you go into Luke, you'll see that showing that the desolation, the Romans was coming to tear some stuff up. Now, Rome came, which they did. They subdued Jerusalem and all that. They went down there. They trod down the temple. They, raided the temple. Obviously, our book of the law was in there. They would have took that. They would have studied it. They would have had wicked Israelites that would teach them certain things, but they studied and they knew now how to stay above us. If they can keep us from serving the Most High God the way He said, they can now constantly be above us. But what they got to do is let us think we are serving the Most High when we're not. So what did they do? They created Christianity and the slave Bible, which would have scriptures that are in the, like what we know today as the regular Bible, but a lot of things deleted. Now I'm going to read you a list of what's been removed. But first, I want to read to you the introduction. Now listen to this. This is page 5 of the Negro Bible, the Slave Bible. Now watch this. This is page 5, introduction. And it reads, "The Negro Bible, the Slave Bible." Then it says, "The Slave Bible was was published in 1807. It was commissioned on behalf of the Society for the Conversion of Negro Slaves in England. The Bible was to be used by missionaries and slave owners to teach slaves about the Christian faith and to evangelize slaves. The Bible was used to teach some slaves to read, but the goal first and foremost was to tend to the spiritual needs of the slaves in the way the missionaries and slave owners saw fit. Now, you see that? They knew we were a spiritual people, and they knew we are a God-fearing people, or at least supposed to be. So they had to now somehow get us to learn the Bible the way they needed us to learn it. But they couldn't give us the complete Bible, because then we'd realize the Bible is talking about us and only us. And the Most High is set us apart to be above all nations of the earth. Because these are things that are in the Bible that you would never hear read in church. We weren't supposed to integrate with other nations. We weren't supposed to marry the people of the other nations, things like that. We were supposed to love our own people, put our own people first. Things like this you will never hear in church, but that's what the actual regular Bible teaches. Now, the slave Bible, all these things have been removed. Now, let me continue on the introduction. Now, this is still on page 5, and it reads, The names of the editors are never mentioned, although their intentions were clear to limit and control the biblical narrative. The missionaries had to minister to the slaves while attempting to appease the slave owners in the British West Indies. The owners feared an uprising. Their usual paranoia was heightened because Haitian slaves had overcome their masters 3 years earlier in the only slave revolt in history, in which slaves successfully overthrew their European oppressors and formed a new nation. Slaves and free people of color, led by a former slave and the first black general of the French army, I can't pronounce his name, Toussaint Louviere, I believe that's his name, Louviere, along with the man who would become his successor, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, defeated Napoleon Bonaparte forces, overcoming their masters. Now listen carefully. What I'm going to read to you next is the rounds this Bible has made. Just listen to where this Bible went and all the people that it taught. Watch this, yeah? This is still in the introduction on page 5 of the Negro Bible, the Slave Bible. Now listen to this. The British West Indies is a collective term for the British territories historically established in the Anglo-Caribbean. Listen to this. It included Anguilla, the Cayman Islands, Turks and Caicos Islands, Montserrat, the British Virgin Islands, the Bahamas, Barbados, Antigua and Bermuda, Dominica, St. Kitts and Nevis, Grenada, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Jamaica, and Trinidad and Tobago. Some definitions also include Bermuda, the former British Guyana, now Guyana, and the former British Honduras, now Belsize. The term includes all British colonies in the region as part of the British Empire. Now you see, this Bible was sent to all those places that I just mentioned to make sure They were heavily indoctrinated. So now when you see, and I always say, each one teach one. So when it comes down to generations, all that's being done now is that same deadbeat Christian doctrine is being passed down from generation to generation, all the way to my generation, and now beyond me, and gone past to these youngsters coming up, all being pushed into Christianity and that doctrine. Yeah, which is the slave man's mentality, where there is no fighting you to those that are oppressing you. You love them regardless. You hate your own people, but you love the other nations. Because when you look, our people always rally and argue to save every nation on the planet, mostly Esau, i.e. the Caucasian, more than any other nation. Why is that? Because we've been mentally destroyed by Christianity. The whole purpose of Christianity was to keep us from serving the Most High God correctly. So we, the true Israelites, will always be in sin. And once we are always in sin, the Most High will never fight for us. And they will always remain above us and reign over us. With that, I'm going to just quickly jump to the book of Isaiah, chapter 3 and verse 12. Listen to this. Isaiah chapter 3 verse 12, and it reads, "As for my people, children are their oppressors, and women rule over them. O my people, they which lead thee cause thee to error, and destroy the way of thy path." So you see, showing that those people that's leading us, that's teaching us in Christianity today, has caused us to error, and they've destroyed the path the Most High set that we are supposed to take, that path to righteousness. They've destroyed that, because now the church teaches you no laws, no statutes, no commandments. And like when you go into Matthew chapter 19 verse 16, when a man came to the one Yahushua and he asked him, "Good master, what good things must I do to inherit eternal life?" What was Yahushua, the one you call Christ, what was his answer? He said, "Why callest thou me good? There's none good but one, that is the Most High God." But he said, "But if thou wilt enter into life, keep the commandments." So you see, even Yahushua, the one you call Christ, is teaching to keep the commandments. But the church don't teach that. So if you're not keeping the commandments, there is no way to eternal life. You see that? Now watch this. I'm going to read the book of 2 Maccabees, chapter 2, verses 2 to 3. Watch this. 2 Maccabees, chapter 2 and verse 2, and it reads, "And how that the prophet, having given them the law, charged them not to forget the commandments of Yahweh, and that they should not err in their minds when they see images of silver and gold with their ornaments." Verse 3, "And with other such speeches exhorted he them, that the law should not depart from their hearts." So you see that? We were given the law, statutes, and commandments, and we were told for it not to depart. But through slavery, it was beaten out. Well, through the Greeks as well, and through from the transatlantic slave trade and the sub-Sahara slave trade, which was the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom, it was beaten out of us, and we were totally stripped from everything that we should do, and we were given Christianity. Now, with Christianity now, there is no, you're not held accountable by these Christian pastors, these bishops, these cardinals, the Pope, or whatever. You're not held accountable for nothing apart from coming in, singing and dancing, getting a few feel-good scriptures, leave your money at the door, and then go where you're going and come back next Sunday for another so-called happy sermon. But what have you learnt? You haven't learned the fear of the Most High, nor keeping his commandments. And if you're not keeping his commandments, you haven't got faith in Yahushua, because faith and works go together. You have to show your faith by your works. And by your works is keeping the commandments. That's how you show your faith. Now, watch this. I'm going to just read something on page 8 of the Slave Bible. Right, watch this. This is in the Negro Slave Bible, and it reads, "In their attempt to eliminate all verses that could plant the seed of rebellion in the minds of the slaves, about 90% of the Old Testament and 50% of the New Testament was deleted." Now, people, you hear that? 90% of the Old Testament was deleted from the Slave Bible. Why is that? And only 50% of the New Testament. This goes to prove, if you don't know the Old Testament, when you do read the New Testament, you haven't got a clue what's going on. Notice they've only left 10% of the Old Testament in the Negro Slave Bible. So you see, even though you have 50% of the New Testament remaining, you have no idea what's going on. Isn't that something? Let me read on. In the Standard Protestant Bible, which is the 66 books, there are 1,189 chapters, but the Bible given to the slaves contain only 232 chapters. Absent from that Bible were all of the Psalms, which express hope for the Most High's delivery from oppression, and the entire book of Revelation. In the Slave Bible, the book of Exodus excludes the story of the rescue of the Israelites from slavery in Egypt, which is the story that gives the biblical book its title. But the Bible includes Exodus chapter 19 and 20, where the Most High appears on Mount Sinai and gives his law, i.e. the 10 Commandments. I would also like to point out, when you look at the listing, which I'll put on the screen, the book of Leviticus, where it's supposed to have 27 chapters, in the Slave Bible, there's 0, because there is where you'll find the feast days of the Most High, and there is where you'll find foods you can and can't eat. So when you look at them feast days as well, you would see that we shouldn't be keeping Christmas, Easter and all that, because the Most High has a set of days that he has ordained for us to keep. But you won't find a record of that at all in the Slave Bible, nor the dietary law, because we're not supposed to be eating shrimp, pork, crab, lobster, things like that. That has all been removed. So a slave will have no idea that these things he shouldn't be eating, and these certain customs he shouldn't be taking part in. Whereas now, by him taking part in these things, he keeps himself in sin. I would like to also point out the book of Jeremiah, where it's supposed to have 52 chapters. There is 0. Because remember, when you go to Jeremiah chapter 10, it shows you there from Jeremiah chapter 10 verses 1 down to about 3 or 4, shows us there that custom that is known today as Christmas. That is vain. It's a custom that the Israelites should not be taking part in. In the Slave Bible, that is being removed. All chapters of Jeremiah has been removed. So you would have no idea these things you shouldn't be doing. So you see that the Christian church, the whole purpose of the Christian church was to make sure the Israelites do not return back to their God. Because the day they do, the Caucasians who's running the Roman Catholic Church, i.e. the Christian church, will lose all their power, and they will no longer be a nation above us. Now, I'm almost out of time, so I want to quickly read Daniel chapter 7 verse 25, and it reads, "And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and dividing of times." So that's basically that times and times and dividing of times is 350 years. So you see that? So everything that they've, done with this Bible, it's been given into their hand, and they have succeeded. But it's not going to be forever, because as you can see, brothers are waking up, now returning back to the Most High and keeping the commandments and teaching the truth of the Bible and pushing the word. You've got brothers out on the streets, online and everything. So the truth now is starting to go out there. And now as the truth is going out there, you can see certain things happening to the Caucasians' kingdom. They're now starting to get slowly jacked up by the Most High. So, I hope I made sense. I'm about to run out of time. With that, this is Yasharala. We out.